continuing and the idea rather than this is the third part of the Lagrange concern and Pebbles' use at Brown and Williamson on the very heels of the Legionnaires Disease. In 1977, the lawyer's point of view was to analyze and suggest whether Brown and Williamson was going to use this. And this is not a secret. These are documents that are placed in the legacy documents, which were originally part of Brown and Williamson documents, because I know I had something to do with distributing those Brown and Williamson documents and was very curious about freon. And so when I released it to the world, so to speak, it ended up in the legacy documents. And, you know, I was amazed that nobody ever really wrote about this. But I did, and this is, I had a fascination with this for over 4 years. Finally found something. Anyway, so in continuation of this, we're talking about two things. One is the concept. Did they know what they were doing? Yes. And why? How long had this been going on? And apparently, since the patents came out in the 60s, and who was doing it? Well, there was a competitive organization, Philip Morris and Liggett, maybe, and a couple of others. They were using two types of expanded tobacco methodology. One was a skid unit, and so in terms of the analysis that one of the lawyers was making at Brown and Williamson just after the Legionnaires Disease, he was stating that at a cost of about $400,000, which 1977 was pretty good cash, Brown and Williams could purchase a skid unit, and then they would have a process planned. And they could purchase it from Reynolds, and this unit had a capacity of about 400, 500 pounds of product a day. And that means that was going to get out into the environment. And then the airborne distribution of freon was greater for the skid than the larger unit per unit. Freon was discharged in the process of creating this tobacco, expanded tobacco process. It was discharged from the unit 4 to 7%, as opposed to only 3% for the larger and the permanent full-scale G13 plant, which probably, and I know by my own memory, it's worldwide, and it was then worldwide. Check out Belgium, a couple of other places, pretty hot stuff. But, if you're looking, it may be in Montreal, who knows? It may be in Scotland, these larger units. But anyway, for the consideration of possible use, the lawyer says, I understand that 600 pounds of freon would be liberated per day as compared to 6,000 pounds per day from the skid unit to the smaller unit to the full-scale unit, which may be all over the world. Who knows? I know that it's somewhere in the world. I've seen it. I've seen the documentation. So you may not have the documentation out there in California, but I've seen it. So if it's out there, and here's Pebbles saying, well, we know we're going to get caught one day. We know that the environmentalists and the EPA is going to catch us one day. So is it worth the investment? Let's just, Brown Williams is always conservative, but here's his comparison, and he's using for a year's production of G13, expanded tobacco. It demonstrates that over 31,000 pounds of CFC are released into the environment, into the atmosphere from the skid unit, as opposed to 3 million pounds released from a full-scale plant. So if we have 10 full-scale plants near and around in Europe and wherever they are, how much is that? Oh, that's pretty heavy stuff. Just those large-scale units, and they're out there. And we have a total relationship between the Phosgene gas theory and the liberated freon. Certainly in the fact that 50 some odd cans, enormous cans of this freon 11 or R12 or R11 was found at the cooling tower in the Bellevue Stratford, and it just seemed to have been overlooked by the CDC at that time. So the comparison of all of this shows you that there's very little concern other than just pure academics. Well, we'll use it if we can get it. And if we get 31,000 pounds of CFCs out there, we're blowing them out, and that's 30 million pounds of freon released by 10 plants over a year. If you got 10 plants, 30 million pounds? I mean, what is your own 2-ton, 3-ton air conditioning unit release per year, and how long does it take to get there? We're talking about plants worldwide, global. An MSA, Master Settlement Agreement, you were not, there's no real issue here for you, because you're out there dilly-dallying in what the notions are in terms of, are we going to have a party this weekend? And are we going to give awards out? Okay, so eventually this lawyer comes to the conclusion that not only does the Consumer Product Commission come to the conclusion through a fellow by the name of Ahmad that this theory is proven, it's true, and these are documents you can read. Ahmad says that, you can do this, and the cigarette has a causative means of projecting this, and yes, that's the way it is. So torn between the ideology of the competitive marketplace in the tobacco industry and the realities of a dangerous product, this lawyer made a very calculated point of analyzing it point by point and saying, well, eventually we should count on the fact that not only is it true, but we have 5 ppm per stick releasing freon 11. Now, and this is decomposing. Decomposing means going out into the atmosphere. I mean, into a room, as in cigarettes, or into a more profound definition of how we're going to deal with future generations. The lawyer's saying this. Future generations, it's a concern, but only if we get caught. My concern is this. Okay. In spite of the hoopla that occurred in 1997 and 98, where there's a triangular effect of money being passed from one place to another. First the lawyers, then that's the lawyers who were working for the attorneys general. Actually, they were basically packaged by Mike Moore, and then with the exception of Minnesota, which wasn't going to be packaged. Then you have the health community coming in and screaming and yelling and saying, look, we need some money. And that's where the other part of the triangle is. And then you have the concessions of what was and what was not going to happen. If the states got the money, they were going to be still going to be held together by a concept of you can't abuse us with nasty language or any kind of truth. We're giving up posters and advertising on billboards. It's as if, the creme de la creme of the elite society, which has produced for years a concept of challenging the industry, melts. And it melts in the form of gold or bullion or dollar bills. It's disgusting. And, when you come to something like this and you're talking about your children's children's children and the future generations, and that when you are an activist, you're doing something to be actively involved. I don't see anything. I just don't see anything coming out of these people. Certainly not out of the states. The states just folded up and said, let's turn this over to our budget committee. There's nothing in this except a dollar bill is a promissory note. And if you're looking at more promissory notes in states and, it's full faith and credit and all that other stuff. But then again, if you're going to give up an ideal to cause some effect in society, then do so. But taking money under the pretense of doing something good, the states are not going to do it. I mean, the legislatures turn over every couple of years, and then the mayors, and whether it's a Republican, Democrat, or whatever, a combination of all or any or all or whatever they are. It's politics, and that money didn't go for anything to cure cancer, help cancer victims, do anything whatsoever. That's exactly what the American legacy prong is doing. Nothing for that end result. Okay, I can talk about quitting, just as they can talk about quitting. And I can post my joint efforts with Walmart or whatever and help. We can put patches on and live. This is nothing but a bunch of people coming together and not looking at where they could be. And of course, the tobacco industry knew what the result would be. You pay, and you just simply don't have to worry about the problems. And look how many things have happened in the last 12 years. All bad. Everything is bad. And I didn't dedicate my years in endanger my life, not my profession, because that wasn't my profession, but to personalize it a bit. You're wasting my work. So, here's some hints. One, if you're going to be activist, and, not a hobbyist, and there are plenty of those, but there were giants of entries into this area of activism before this agreement. Okay, I think I've said enough for one time. There are 3 parts to this one. And it's interesting that the tobacco industry was looking at this such efficiently. And certainly, by now, we may have how many billions of pounds out there since 1977 or even before that? A whole bunch of residual freon into the atmosphere. And CFCs, you have your own Nobel laureates who prove that's the case. And there's it. The end of this.